Good day to every one of you. Gina is extending her apologies because, ironically, she's got some health issues. So I'm Mary Angela, and I'll be leading the forum today. To start with, I'd like to thank each one of you, John, Tero, Clive, and Daniel, for taking time out to be with me today. During this forum, I will not be asking each of you a domino question. Well, as you can see, I prepared pieces of papers, and in these pieces of papers are your names and corresponding question for each of you. Before we proceed, I would like to thank or to give credit to 101 authors interview and teachers vision for the questions. So to start with, I'd like to hear about each one of you a bit. I'd like you to introduce yourselves and greet our audience. Shall we start with, who would like to start? The TEDx speaker, Tero.
Very good. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here. My name is Tero Moliis. I am a Finnish man living in Mexico and around the little planet of ours. Very nice to be here today. And I'm also the author of the book called Life is a Sandcastle, which tells you that everything is temporary and you should enjoy life every moment, not plan too further ahead into the future because it is uncertain. Very happy to be here, joined by these interesting guys, and let's do this.
All right. Shall we hear from Clive? Clive is he's a sort of like a celebrity in a wheelchair. All right, maybe hear from Clive.
Well, thank you. Some 37 years ago, I took an antibiotic and ended up not being able to walk or get dressed or anything like that. And the doctors said it was hopeless and there was nothing that could be done. And they were wrong. They were completely wrong. And that was 37 years ago. And so over those years, I've studied what health is, a subject that doctors know zero about. And so I've been trying constantly to sort of simplify what health is and what people need to do. And I've realized over the years that actually most of us are very similar, and most of us are low on the same nutrients, poisoned by the same poisons as almost everybody else. And because it's a question of, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what's wrong with your ability to self-repair and fight anything off. We're designed not to break down. But if you don't put oil in your car, it might break down. We're in that sort of situation. So that's what I try to do, to explain to people that maybe it's not as difficult to get well as they might previously have thought.
Thank you, Tero. Thank you, Clive. Now let's move on to Daniel. Daniel is one of those accomplished authors and business person from Canada. Daniel.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm co-founder of Canadian Forest Tree Essences, so I've written extensively about trees. And for a long time, 30, 40 years, I've written about crystal healing as well, healing with my last book is called The Little Book of Rattling, a little powerful meditation approach that is never been written about as far as I can see, but is well known and practiced throughout the world. So I'm living near Ottawa in Canada, just been up almost 6 years in the Arctic. So I'm glad to be down where there are trees.
Thank you, Daniel. Now to John. John is a multi-talented person, and he is a superstar in his own right too. Okay, now let's call him John.
Yeah, I'm John Tuck, and I have many different interests and pursuits, but mainly surrounding energy-centered focus. So broadly speaking, I call myself a holistic energy scientist. I've spent the majority of my career building upon the knowledge of everything explained by quantum physics, which I was introduced to during my first degree. So I completed my Doctor of Philosophy degree at the University of Oxford in 2001 in the UK. My scientific knowledge expands across the spectrum of disciplines of physics, quantum physics, chemistry, electrochemistry, and gradually moving into biology as I begin to learn more about the interface between the disciplines in terms of energy. I just love the combination of science and healing. For example, I make nanocolloidal silver using restructured and healed water, and I use pulse electromagnetic frequency healing equipment, which is capable of healing pretty much anything should a correct diagnosis be available. Most of what I do is in my spare time. As a day job, I work in patents, intellectual property for an energy storage company. I'm a consultant through startup companies in that arena, in the medical device arena. I've undertaken an intensive MBA type training course, and I co-founded a company who developed and distributed food capacity or ultra-fast charging storage devices. I have patents and publications in multiple fields of discipline, and I'm the author of A Theory of Everything. I'm also a Reiki master teacher, and I give workshops explaining energy healing from a quantum physics perspective. I'm president of TBC-InTV, which is a global initiative, and the culmination of extensive work effort of myself and my fiancée, Angela Mary Moore. TBC encompasses her knowledge and experience of teaching English as a second language, her lecturing and providing workshops on personal development and business leadership, and my teaching surrounding everything contained in my book and more. Our flagship product is Self-Owned Journalism, where we're dedicated to bringing raw, unedited footage of primarily good news stories into the global media scene, a contribution to redefining broadcasting at this time. We have about 16 members of staff across 10 countries who Angela has very skillfully trained with exceptional code of ethics and code of practice and ethics. And my mission, my passion and my purpose is to help people who are ready for it and who desire it by sharing my knowledge and wisdom that I've researched and developed throughout my life, with primary focus on healing, health, well-being, mental health, and using all of the resources I have at my fingertips.
All right. Thank you, John. Okay, now let's start with the first question. For Clive, what do you like to do when you're not in your lab?
At the moment, I'm spending most of my time in the garden trying to turn it into a food factory. And I've also got a scrambler motorbike, which I like going out on. I like going for walks. And just the last few days, this where I live used to be a plum growing area, and there are actually some escapee plums in the hedgerows. So I've just been picking those and doing everything I can think with them. I'm dehydrating some. I put some in a bundle of brandy for 7 days, and the plum brandy after 7 days was absolutely outrageously good. I mean, incredible. Yeah, you could sell the stuff. It was that good. So yeah, that's a snapshot.
Thank you. Prepare your questions for Clive. Okay, we're going to do that part too. Okay, for Tero, how did you come up with the title of your book?
What a good question. Well, it was actually, I was 17 years old and I was on a beach in San Sebastian, Spain. And I was building a sandcastle when this epiphany epiphany happened when I understood that, you know, everything is temporary and my life is just like a sandcastle, that it will be destroyed tomorrow for sure. But even so, I wanted to spend hours building it today and make it feel that it's worth it. So the title came from that, simply for being there, building a sandcastle, and realizing it's a good metaphor for life.
Yeah, I think you made mention about that during our interview. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Write your questions for Tero. All right. Next. For Daniel, what is the most difficult part of your writing process? Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. There you
Sure.
go. Okay.
Geez, that's actually a difficult question. Writing actually, the last book just more or less wrote itself. It was really just almost like taking dictation. It was very easy, and it was a very sweet process. So I can't say that was difficult. I mean, a long book. One of the books I worked on was called American Mystic, Memoirs of a Happy Man, about an American named A. Ramana, an awakened Buddha who had ashrams in the United States and in India. And so in that process, a friend named Saroja, had interviewed him before he died. And so I took those interviews, and which were many, and spent a year bringing them into an order where it read and was true to his word and how he would speak. So that was, I don't know if it was difficult. It was a meticulous and long process, and very rewarding, because I think it is a very fine account of this mystic's life and work and approach. So, but it just took a long time and a lot of care.
Interesting. Write your questions to Daniel. All right. Next. Okay, for Clive again. How much research do you need to make? How much research do you need to make a medical gadget or medicine?
I'm not sure why the question's being asked, really. A medical gadget, there are thousands of them out there. I don't think the world needs another one.
Because I met you in one of the seminars and you were presenting gadgets.
Well, yes, no, I talk a lot about frequency, and you know, everything has a resonant frequency, or an individual frequency, and you know, you can take something like a tuning fork, you can take something like a much bigger tuning fork.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness. Please unmute.
That's not real, is it, Clive?
And unmute, please.
Sorry,
There you go.
must.
What's that?
Yeah, no, it's
Giant
absolutely
fork.
real.
What's that? Wow.
Oh my goodness.
What's that for?
Well, there are about 8 of them that are made in the States. This one is the frequency of the third eye, which is, if I can see it, 216 hertz in the key of A. I gave a talk some 10 years ago to a group of sound healers, and I asked them, is there one that you use the most? And they all agreed that 90% of the time they use the Om frequency, which is at 136.1. And I found that sometimes, if I haven't got other pieces of equipment with me, and this was all I had, I might ring it and put it, let's say somebody has a sore knee, I might put it directly on the sore knee, and you know, it's sort of primitive, but it works fairly well. But by choice, I use devices like this.
I saw that. Yeah. That's what I saw.
This is a Tesla device, and this one was probably 1920s, maybe very early 30s. And a group of us for many years have been tracking down original machines and restoring them. So essentially, well, I can send you, I'll send you a link after this to a video that I made where I used the device to get 34 people out of pain in a row. Jonathan can talk a little bit about it. Jonathan, I think you might need to come closer to the microphone because I found it very hard to hear you. You were very quiet. So you had a result.
This is any better.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, you had a result. I think so.
Yes, absolutely. I've worked with Clive for many years now and been absolutely fascinated with all of the technologies he's not only been investigating but also has available for his clients.
Yeah.
And Clive introduced me to the diathermy and also reintroduced me to the Tesla violet ray tubes. And we had some tremendous success with some challenges that I've had for most of my life. So, for example, as a result of what I've described in my book, and a very similar experience tangibly to what Clive experienced, like a trauma early in life, I was unable to feel my right leg below the knee, other than sort of pins and needles and cramps. And with just one single treatment with the diathermy with Clive, I could feel my feet again. It was just incredible. I think as a result, I've actually quoted Clive in my book on a number of things,
Yes.
which he's inspired me with, and which I've been extremely grateful for. So thank you, Clive.
Yeah, thank you, John, thank you for substantiating Clive's answer. Okay, thank you, Clive. Now here's for John. How long does it take you to write your book?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it can be broken down into a number of different areas. I mean, in the bigger picture, it took me my whole life. Realistically, once I sat down and started to write, I actually wrote the first edition or the first draft of the first edition in 3 months. Where the time was eaten away was in editing the book. So I teamed up with an editor, a local lady who also edited a book with Bear Grylls, the famous ex-SAS guy or whatever, who does survival guides on the television. But also she was very well endowed with nutrition and dietary practice. So it was the perfect combination. It took 2 years to make the book flow like water, as she promised, and she delivered. I was really happy with what she came up with. So in all, about 3 years.
All right, thank you so much. Write your questions for John. Right, Daniel, Daniel, when did
Yes.
you write your first book, and how old were you when you wrote it, and why?
Okay, I wrote my first book. It was actually called The Art of Grant Tigner. My father was an exceptionally fine artist. So that was written in 1990. So I was still I wasn't that young. I was, let's see, I was born in 53, so do the math, 37. It was really to show his work. He died in 1999, and did some splendid work afterwards. But it was, so what I did was I interviewed him and took the transcripts and worked that into a narrative. in a very simple book with beautiful paintings. So that was my first book. Yeah.
Right. That must be a very creative masterpiece.
I think it's a fine book. I do think it's a fine book, yes.
Okay, great. Next question for Tero. What was one of the most surprising things you learned in creating your book?
Probably the most surprising thing that I learned was that I could do it. I mean, we all have this you know, dreams of writing a book, and you know, everybody talks about it. Very few people actually do write it, but more and more every day they do. So I was really surprised that I could do it. So I just started writing, and then words came out, and it became easier and easier and easier. Still took a long time, but that was, I think, the biggest surprise, and I fell in love with it. I really found myself at some point just in the flow and really, you know, enjoying it very much and happy. Of course, now when you finish writing the book, then again you fall into this deep despair of not wanting to start again. So I think what I respect most in authors is the capability of starting writing a new book. I think that is one of the hardest things in the world, and I'm just breaking that for. I just began writing my next book, so something like that.
I agree. I agree. All right, next. For Daniel again. How many books have you written, and which one is your favorite?
I've written, I believe it's 8 books now. So 3 of them are related to trees and healing with the energy of trees. One is the art book. One is a little novel I wrote with my niece for 12-year-old girls. It's a sports story. And then there's The American Mystic. There's another one that is, it's called Everyone at the Time of Your Life, Everyone Has a Story. And we interviewed 40 people age 50 and older about their life journeys. So it's simple wisdom of ordinary life. And then there was American Mystic, and finally the Little Book of Rattling. So what's my favorite? I think I'll have to just flip a, you know, go pick a card or something like you're doing.
Isn't that almost like asking which one is your favorite child, you know?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, speaking of your 3 essences, we are going to collaborate with you. We were like initial stages of talks with your partner.
Yeah, good. The 3 essences are something really special, and they're, you know, energy essences, and I want to ask, of course, questions of like all of you actually about, you know, related to the essences, and John with quantum physics, but they're really, you know, vibrational essences that work with, you know, frequency and energy at a level that's quite amazing. So, and they're powerful healing agents.
Right. Okay. We will have a very interesting forum later. Next question is for John. John, do you hear from your readers much, and what kinds of things do they say about your book?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do hear a lot from my readers, but mainly because I ask them for feedback for marketing purposes and things like that. So the first feedback I received was what inspired me to subsequently publish the book for a wider audience. So originally I called this Things I Wish I'd Known at Your Age. And I actually only wrote it for my children and myself, of course. So I wrote it for my children. And I sent a copy to a friend, a child psychologist and author herself. really just to make sure I wasn't talking nonsense, because I'm not a classically trained psychologist, and I talk a lot about psychology and what I've learned in my life about human psychology. So I really just wanted her to say, you know, yeah, you're on the right track, or no, this is nonsense. And what she came back with was quite tremendous. She said, if every parent in the world read this book, the world would be a better place. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I should take it further. Maybe I should publish it. So again, as I said, I worked with the author, the editor, and my first edition of the book was received tremendously. I don't think I received any negative criticism at all, and it was all very much pleasing for me that I'm certainly seem to be on the right track, and have culminated all of the advice and information that I've gleaned from everywhere else and put it all into one place, which has been described as a manual for life. I don't think a theory of everything is the best title I could have chosen, but if I could call it anything else, I'd call it a manual for life.
Great. Yes, indeed. It's a manual for life. All right. So our next question is, okay, let me just shuffle again. All right. It's for Clive. Clive, you're a star. You know, you're a lot of people buy. I mean, internationally, I think you're shipping your gadgets or equipment. So I call that creative medicine to a lot of people all over the world. So how do you process negative reviews? You've got a lot of positive reviews, but you see, we cannot escape negative reviews. So how do you process that?
By not reading them.
Wise. Very wise.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Next. This is for Tero. When did you realize you wanted to be a writer?
I think I was very young. I sort of, when you dream of being an astronaut and you dream of being, you know, those things, I think I already then I thought about becoming a writer, because I had the fortune of having parents who read a lot and you know, inspired me to read a lot as well. So I started reading quite from a young age, and I always admired like authors in a way that they were mystical creatures who somehow created these books and adventures that we fell in love with. So I think I've always wanted to be an author, and when I finally actually I started a lot of books in my life, but I finished a very few of them. And so the first time I finished my first book, I was already 47 years old. So it sometimes takes a long time, but it's never too late. So I still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up, which is a great way to see life too.
It's never too late. I like that. Okay, this one is for John. What inspired the idea of your book?
Yeah, I suppose that's quite a long story, because again, it plays on something Clive mentioned, and that is having experienced a particular trauma in a health sense. And as I said before, I ultimately wrote the book for my children and myself, originally entitled Things I Wish I'd Known at Your Age. Just going back a bit historically, as a result of a significant trauma that I experienced at the age of 8, I essentially broke my head. I don't know if you can see the
yeah, that's far, yeah.
So I was 8 years old. I broke my head essentially, and I spent 2 weeks in a coma, and I was given a 70% chance of emerging from the coma as a cabbage, which was acceptable terminology back then. But as a result, I dedicated my life to researching the truth about health and well-being and the essence of life itself, based on the principle that anything is possible if you believe. I mean, for me to have been provided with an insight to death, but more importantly to life at such an early age was invaluable. And coupled with my glass half full mentality, and of course I was extremely grateful for the surgeons for saving my life. I set about an incredible journey of enlightenment and achievement beyond conventional or mainstream medical teachings and practice, very similar to what Clive just described of his experience, although I certainly don't have the wealth of knowledge and experience that Clive has. I've certainly taken advantage of life in that respect. So in 2017, when the child psychologist suggested I wrote the book, I jumped at the chance.
Great answer. All right, we have last set of questions. Then after this, we're going to have your interaction. All right. So for Tero, what do the word writer's block mean to you?
Of course, it's a sort of understandable cliche that writer's block means that you have nothing, no more content to create. Nothing comes out of your mind or your fingers or your whatever, your mouth. I think it's my understanding of it. It is just a lack of motivation or inspiration. So I find it my writer's block comes when I'm distracted with other things in life. So I'm not at the right headspace to write or to share sort of knowledge. It can be a conversation one-on-one, having a large audience, or just writing my book, or even just sitting by myself on a couch. But all those moments will not work if my mind is sort of not there and I'm distracted by pending stressful things or some other stuff. So I think that's writer's block for me.
All right, thank you. For Clive, is Clive still with us? All right, Clive, what inspired you to get into creative medicine?
Almost dying.
Oh.
It's quite motivating.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I mean,
I can relate.
Would you like to explain further?
Well, if you're told you're going to die, you're either going to give in and go, oh well, or you're going to try and refuse to accept that as a possibility. And the doctors used to say to me in hospital, well, we can help you with drugs. And my reply is, well, I'm not low on drugs. That's not a lack of pharmaceutical medicines is not my problem.
Do you really?
And what had actually happened was that I'd been given a pharmaceutical medicine in the first place because I was perfectly healthy up until I took one antibiotic, and I'm on the floor. And it takes a few months, but I realized I can no longer walk. And at that point, one morning I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't have any strength left. I was in too much pain to get out of bed. I was stuck there. So they put me in hospital, And after many, many weeks, they said, absolutely nothing we can do except give you drugs, and we'll do surgery, inject you with gold, was the fashionable thing at the time. And but luckily I could read books. And after a few weeks, I figured it out. I figured out what nutrition I was low on. I figured out why I was there. I mean, I knew anyway that it was the antibiotic, but of course the doctors denied everything, Oh, it's impossible, impossible, nothing to do with the antibiotic we just drugged you with. And so, I got, luckily I was married, and my wonderful wife wheeled me out in a wheelchair and looked after me, and I started taking supplements, and I changed my diet, and all the problems went away, basically, most of them anyway.
The world really needs to learn from you. You've got a lot to share to the world.
Well, so it wasn't difficult. I mean, I'll just tell you, I had several issues, but the main one that was really affecting me then was rheumatoid arthritis. My joints were so inflamed and I was in so much pain. If you looked at my hands, you would have thought I was 80 years old. You know, they looked like an 80-year-old's did. And I was told it's irreversible, nothing you can do. But I'm a rebel basically, and if somebody tells me you can't do it, I'm probably going to want to do it quite badly. And so the weird thing was, I got to the stage, where I couldn't get out of bed. I was too weak. I couldn't do my buttons up, but it didn't actually affect how I somehow I got used to it really quickly. Being incapacitated, I surprised myself. I thought, well, if I ever got to that stage, I'd want to kill myself type thing. But actually, it wasn't like that at all. Life just went on as it always had, but just with a few, my concentration was on areas that were different to before. But it didn't take that long to get better. And it was, what got me better basically was realizing that my gut bacteria had been damaged, so I couldn't digest food properly anymore. So it was a question of probiotics, lots of magnesium, because anybody with pain or arthritis is going to have magnesium deficiency as a really big area. Vitamin C, very, very important. I took just a few basic supplements, and I got better. And I realized that almost everybody is low on the same stuff. Everybody's low on iodine, pretty much. And what happens if you're low on iodine? Well, you can't think straight. If you've got dry skin, for instance, if you've got brain fog, if your temperature is out of control, hot flushes, or on the other hand, you're really cold. People say, oh, you got hot hands. You got really cold hands. If you have hormonal issues, if you have breast cancer, there are many signs which scream out iodine deficiency. And most people are low on iodine just because they're, if you're drinking water with chlorine in it, or bathing in water with chlorine, or worse, fluoride. We bought some new furniture recently with a fire retardant, which would be bromine. All of those are damaging your thyroid and displacing the iodine that should be in your body with those poisonous halogens. So everybody's low on these basic things. And to put iodine in perspective, you may know that in Japan, they have no traditional word for menopause because it really wasn't a thing in Japan. The reason was that the Japanese women were eating seaweed pretty much with every meal, which is the highest source of iodine. It would have been very fresh, so the iodine wouldn't have had time to evaporate necessarily out of the seaweed. They eat a lot of seafood, also high in iodine. And it's quite a long, thin island. A lot of them were by the sea, where if you're by the sea, you're likely to be breathing in iodine. So mothers who give birth to children, and the mother has lots of iodine, the child will have a high intelligence. But if the mother is clinically low on iodine, the child could be born with mental retardation. It is massive, and people know nothing about it. And you can buy a bottle of it that'll last a year for £20, $25, something like that.
Whoa.
It's crazy. So, I started a club some time ago to get this information out there on one level. It's behind a club because in 2014, the UK government told me and the people I was working with that we had 24 hours to take all our videos off YouTube because we were giving health advice that the UK government didn't like. So at that point, I started a club, because behind a club, you can show videos, because it's a club, it's private, except for members. So I started something called secrethealthclub.com.
Yes.
Secrethealthclub.com.
And you have a website, yeah.
Well, I've got a website there, but my normal website, which is clivetakal.com, I'm not allowed to put any facts. I mean, on the front page of my website, I used to put something like my experience and the experience of doctors for the last 50 years is that vitamin C can be a fantastic way to reverse cancer. Something like, I can't remember what I put. Anyway, immediately 4 government bodies came down on me. So you can't print that because only doctors can cure cancer. There's the Cancer Act, they can send you to jail for 2 years if you claim to cure cancer. then I reduced it to C ... They came right down on me right away. You can't put that. We know what you mean. And so I can't, I mean, legally, I cannot put words like water will hydrate your body.
What?
No, yeah, this is a health claim, and I've never done a double-blind study about water compared to anything else to show it really does hydrate you. I mean, this is, I mean, I may not be 100% accurate in what I'm saying, but you can't do a double-blind study against water. Nothing tastes like water. You know, so the rules, you got to do a double-blind study. You know, it's the pharmaceutical industry, the medical mafia have taken over education of everybody in the world. And people think doctors know what they're doing. People think that doctors study health. But most doctors tell me that they do about 4 hours a year on what you and I would call health. So they don't know about health. They don't know about vitamins, minerals. They don't know, generally speaking, because they just drug people.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, makes sense. Thank you. All right, next is for John. What part of your book did you have a difficulty writing?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think I had tremendous difficulty writing any of the book. I mean, I think most of what I wrote about, I'd researched and thought about and practiced for anywhere up to 20 years of my life. So you know, it all really flowed very, very easily for me. And also any additional research I needed to do was quite easy to do as well. And I think also being surrounded by a community of like-minded people like Clive, who assisted me and pointed me in the right direction. Like Roger Davidson is another prolific mentor of mine, who introduced me to the pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices, and also a lot of the studies and work that I do with water, which is one of the most abundant yet misunderstood conventionally mediums on Earth. You know, so it's you know, I don't think I really found any of the sections particularly difficult. It was really just the editing that needed to be done in order to, interestingly, make it flow like water.
Okay, yeah. And you have a lot more to share. Okay, now let's go to Daniel. Daniel, as a child, what did you want to do when you grew up?
What did I want to do when I grew up? That was a while ago. I feel like I've been a child many times in my life. And this life I've incarnated about 6, 7 times, or it feels like 6, 7 lives in one. So what did I want to do? I would say that I wanted to know God. And when I went to university, I wanted to become a writer. That's and so knowing the source of all and knowing self, that's really what the journey seemed to be about. And yeah, and so that's it, I guess. I can't say that you know, many things happen in life, and understandings arise and grow, and consciousness grows. That seems to be the you know, this amazing journey of knowing thyself.
Yeah, you probably had known your purpose early in life.
In that sense, yes, of knowing knowing, you know, who are you?
Mm.
That was always there fundamentally to me, even
Yes.
when I was a small child.
Mm. Okay, so we will have more discussions. I'm done. So now it's your turn to ask questions to each other. Would like to start? John, would you like to start? Okay. Wait. All right. Sarah or John?
All right, I'll start with a
All
funny
right,
question.
Sarah.
My question is to Danielle. We're both Northerners. I'm from Finland. You're from Canada, and I also, you know, have always been surrounded all my life by trees. I love them, and we have a symbiosis with them, at least in Finland. And I was curious, as you're an expert on trees, which one for you is the best tree to hug?
Well,
I have a clear choice. I have a clear choice.
Yeah, I think there's the tree that you want to hug is the tree that resonates with you, that calls you. You know, a tree, it's not a one way. It's like you know, it's like you're meeting a woman, and there's the attraction, and if that attraction leads somewhere, then and I think, you know, it's throughout life. You may be with different partners. You know, I've had numerous partners in my life, and you know, each partner is a great joy. So the trees are similar. The experience of the different trees are, you know, just been some amazing experiences. There's the General Sherman in California, which is one of the oldest and largest trees, and you feel like you're in this incredibly powerful presence. There was a place in Manitoba in central Canada a place called Manitou Abbey, which means place of the Great Spirit. And there were jack pine there that stood as guardians, and being with those jack pine was a powerful experience. And those are places where you made essences of both those trees. Then I would say there's a tree here, eastern white cedar, which is often used as a hedge. My partner with the tree essences, Céline Cloutier, is a Buddha. She's an awakened Buddha, living Buddha, and you know, an amazing presence. And after her awakening, which was actually on a specific day, we went to a forest with Thuya, which is very grounding, very kind of male energy grounding, the eastern white cedar. So those are some examples. One further example would be the sugar maple. And maples have a quality of delight, I would say. So all those trees.
I can tell we open up Pandora's box in a positive way here, but you know, yeah. My favorite tree to hug is the birch. It's perfect and smooth and beautiful.
Which one? The white birch?
White birch. So yeah, the ones we get in Finland.
See, there's in our essences we have yellow birch and we have a paper white birch.
Oh, the white, you know, the zebra looking spotted. You know, they're not the zebra, the spotted tree. But anyway, sorry about
the white
that.
Birch, it makes total sense for your work too, though, the change and the white birch is a very flexible presence. So
yes. Great.
Nice. Okay.
Anyway. Thank you.
Let's try to embrace that. There's a lot of white birch in Marlborough, right, John?
Yeah, we have silver birch. I don't know if that's similar.
Okay, next question,
Well,
John. John?
My question is to Tero, and I'm just curious, how did you come about being approached by TED to give a talk on TED? Because that's a really cool thing to do.
Thank you. I think I was just posting a lot of personal opinions and nonsense on LinkedIn, and eventually drew the attention of the right people. So, I mean, I think consistency on your messaging, in a sense that, you know, I was very truthful to what I believed in, and I just kept sharing that same message until it resonated. Somebody said, "You really know about this one thing," and it happened to be that the theme of that year's TED Talk, you know, the event was something related to what I was talking about. So I was a very perfect match for them. So it just sort of happened, but it happened because I was there speaking about this topic that I loved. So it was a kind of a matter of, yeah, it just happened. But again, I'm not a total idiot, so I did connect with the people that I know who decide and organize. So you have to have them in the audience. Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you for sharing.
So I'd like to ask a question of Daniel.
Oh, okay, Clive. Okay.
Clive, okay.
If I got it right, you said that you were living above the tree line for 5 years. I thought, well, that's a bit odd, and why you might want to do that. And then, secondly, when you say essences, are we talking like essential oils or extract? You know, what do you produce? Because I haven't been introduced to you before, so it's all new to me.
Oh, thanks, Clive. Well, I went up to in the early 90s. I actually taught a couple of years in the far north in a place called Igloolik. I taught high school there 2 years, and then in around 2016, I went back up north to a place called Arviat. All these places are in Nunavut, so they're actually, some are above the Arctic Circle, and some, but Arviat isn't, but still extremely cold. I don't know. You have a calling, and I find it odd to think about as well. And I think I've completed my journey up north for now, anyway. But there is a kind of a silence, and there's something in the north and in that extreme that that is nourishing. That I don't know if it's nourishing or expanding. You think about the Inuit that lived there, that were alone on the land, journeying in this vastness and this vast silence and cold and surviving and living. So something attracted me. Maybe perhaps it was a past life, or just the explorer in me that enjoys that. Now, as far as the trees, the tree essences are vibrational essences in the lineage of Bach essences. So they're, I started in the 1970s. I started working with the Bach essences and other essences and making my own. And then that expanded till we then ended up creating or co-creating these essences that are called Canadian forestry essences with Céline Cloutier. And that was in the 90s. And I thought, I still think that these essences are particularly powerful from trees, but also some of the methods that we use to what I would call layer the energy in the essences. So they're a little bit using, I guess you could say, we use some of the homeopathic principles in the essences to succuss them and bring that energy into the water. And these essences Yeah, they have definitely a profound healing effect. And right now we don't manufacture our cells anymore. We have 4 sub-manufacturers that manufacture essences and sell them under their own names. But so that's how we're working.
And
So,
I find the whole essence science to be truly amazing. Let me just tell you one story that happened to me, which really blew me away. I've got 4 children, and as they were very young, you know, sometimes they'd cry, and sometimes you'd know why, and sometimes they'd cry and didn't know why. And the thing that worked the best of everything I knew at that point was Bach's rescue remedy on the temples. And I experimented with other liquids, but I proved to myself time after time after time that if you've got a crying baby, Bach's flower remedy on the temples works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Bach, you know, his contribution to healing was, you know, quite an amazing. And he was a very gifted healer. As you know, he originally was a doctor, and then he became an internist, and then he became a homeopath, and then he transitioned or he was inspired to make these essences, and would feel the energies, and he would experience, for example, anger, and then he would find, you know, holly to help him deal with that anger. And he formulated some principles of, you know, the vibration, as I see it. You know, I've written a lot about it, about resonance and vibrational healing. And I see it as one of basically five levels of healing, and healing is complete with those 5 levels. The first is the physical, when you talk about, you know, iodine or iodine and vitamin C, and then there's and each area that we've, you know, people have worked extensively at, but complete healing is dealing with all 5 levels. And the second level is the circulation of energy, which is acupuncture and related areas. And then the third in the middle is the vibrational, the frequency, the vibration. And then you have the mind and thoughts. So everyone here writing is working with that level. You know, what's your attitude towards life, your basic hypnosis, like if you're talking about sandcastles, it's a fundamental attitude towards life. And then the highest level is just pure consciousness. So all those levels are involved in healing. And so the essences, though, have kind of a special place. I think they kind of unify as well, the different levels of healing.
Can you outline a few others like Holly and what they do?
Holly? Well, I can outline.
No, not Holly itself, but other essences. You said Holly and anger, for instance. You know, are there other states that you can say, well, actually, the essence you need is likely to be this one?
Well, we have an essence which is a combination, which used to be called Life Embrace. Now it's called Joyful Living. That I found it really effective for depression when you're and it's a combination of 5 essences. By the way, it was the government that came along and says you can't call it Life Embrace. So we changed. We said this is a great essence. No way we're stopping to offer this. So we changed the name of the label, but that was just because the government came along and said, so that cost us like $10,000 to change everything and keep the essence. But
well, what reason did the government give?
Well, actually, they came up. We had an essence for children, which was called Children Happy Helping Potion. So they came along. The inspector came along and said, "You can't have an essence for children where's your proof for this? And it was a lovely, gentle essence that was that Celine Cloutier had tested in Waldorf schools. She was a director of a Waldorf school at that time, and the children loved it. They would just love having this essence. And but he said, you can't do that. You can't have, you can't say, have an essence that, you claim is good for children. And then, by the way, I don't like this. I don't like your name of this one here and this other one over here. So no, just government. So we went to a meeting with just an aside, we went to a meeting with the Canadian Government Natural Health Directorate at one time, and they were nice enough, and they said, go away and don't, unless people complain, we'll ignore you. But that's government, unfortunately, everywhere is making life. I have a question for you, Clive. I find you're fascinating, and I'm certainly going to look up more. But I wanted to know two things, actually. One is that Tesla device looks fascinating. I'd love to know more about that, or if it's possible to, get that, or are there people working with it? And then the other thing, though, was Rife and his microscope and his instruments. If you found anything there?
Okay. Well, I found the Tesla technology first, then I found the Rife technology, and I've probably tried all manner of different devices over the years. I've tried Russian devices, ones from Germany, all over the place, America. But I've just gone back now, right back to absolute basics. So these devices, the Tesla devices, unlike the Rife, where you've got to choose frequencies and scan, however you want to do it, this doesn't work like that at all. It's scalar energy. So you don't have a positive and negative. You just have one connection, so that the energy is linear. And you see a plasma when it's lit up. You see a purple plasma, or different colors for different gases, literally going up the tube. And so how Tesla described it was that it gives you a cellular massage, and the effects are very fast. So it's very, very relatively high frequencies and very, very high voltages, incredibly low ampage, but voltages in the hundreds of thousands. Now, as you know, beyond a certain voltage, let's say 10,000 volts, you can hold the positive and negative, and you won't get a shock because your muscles, the frequency is too fast for your muscles to respond. Whereas with a low voltage, like 220 or something, it could be quite dangerous. 110 is a quarter of the voltage of 240, or 230, I should say. Anyway, so how this works, you have a Tesla coil in the control box, then you have another Tesla coil in the handle. They are tuned to one another for resonance. And essentially, you have every frequency going on. So Tesla found in the 1880s that people coming into his lab where all the high tension, high voltage equipment was on, that people with aches and pains or whatever seemed to be wrong with anybody, they all got fixed. And he realized that high frequencies, very high voltages, were healing, full stop. So in answer to the other part of your question, I offer them for sale, and I offer them for sale within the club. But anybody who wants to contact me can write to Clive at secrethealthclub.com, or actually a better one just for now would be info@clivetakal.com. And it's super important with these devices that they're looked at by people who know what they're doing, because 100-year-old wiring, 100-year-old capacitors, 100-year-old physical actuators and so on they need specialist care to, because fail safe wasn't necessarily in 1910 or something, wasn't necessarily the norm. And but they're available and fantastic. I mean, just unbelievable. Everybody thinks that modern technology is better than old technology, but this is absolute proof that the opposite is true. And just for legal reasons, I no longer see clients, but I'm trying to encourage groups of people, individuals, people who want to change their profession and become a health advocate, to sorry, I'm putting on some 2-day courses for club members to try and explain how to learn how this stuff works. And it's amazing. I've got, I can't show you from here, but I've got a large hospital machine, which is actually where I sort of started. I was working with a medical doctor, and he told me that the hospitals around the world were using this technology, and that doctors around the world were using this technology. And I was already a fan of Tesla, but I had no idea that the only inventions that he didn't patent were his healing devices, and he invented 3 of them. And so I started using the hospital version to start with, alongside the doctor, and we were having results that were unbelievable, just incredible. First person I used it on, and it only has one knob, like a volume knob. First person I used it on, he'd been in pain for 3 months, came out immediately. Next person I used it on had been in pain for 20 years, comes out of pain. I met him at a party, and I said to him, look, I don't know what's happened here. It's only the second time I've used the technology. He'd been in pain for 20 years. The only reason he come to the party, being able to get to the party, was the morphine and the painkillers he'd taken at the beginning of the evening. Anyway, I leave from the party. He stays on. I tell him to be careful. Anyway, he rings me at 8 o'clock the next morning and said, Clive, I had the best night for years. I danced till 4 in the morning. Oh, God. And he said, I'm in more pain now than I've ever been for the last 20 years. And come back and treat. So I treat him again for about 15 minutes. He stays out of pain for 2 years. I treat him again, and I think a third time, and I haven't heard from him since. So this was in hospitals. With the hospital one, you could treat the entire body at once. You could lay them on a couch, treat the entire body. And I started buying all the textbooks from that time. I've got a whole mass of them because these, before Rockefeller medicine, pharmaceutical medicine took over, the doctors were taught this stuff. So all the books are there, all the instruments are there. It's just that people just assume that modern stuff progress must have happened, mustn't it? But what happened with the hospital machines was that radio happened in the world, and they interfered with radio. So the clever scientists switched from long wave, essentially, to short wave. And then after that, valve technology came out, and they switched from coil technology to other more modern tech, like valves gave way to transistors, and now solid state. So it took them a couple of years to fully realize that while the shortwave devices, shortwave diathermy, works quite well, it was also killing people. It took them a couple of years to realize that it wasn't as safe as the previous technology. And then they got taken out of many operating theaters and treatment rooms because the Second World War started, and they could be changed into radio transmitters. And they're worried about spies, Japanese spies and German spies, that kind of thing. So they were basically sidelined. But the doctors who were using the big machines really began to hate the public because they were using the small machines, the one that I showed you at the beginning. Now, initially, doctors were using them. I've got a set behind me, which the doctors would do house calls with it, and they could do surgery and get people out of pain with the same instrument, just at a different frequency level. And ophthalmologists, eye surgeons today use diathermy when they're doing an operation on the eye, because with diathermy, it's electrical and it cauterizes. In other words, there's no bleeding. But even with the sharpest scalpel, you'll bleed, and you don't want that inside the eye. So this technology, invented by Tesla 125 years ago or something, is still used today. The ozone generators that most manufacturers use are still Tesla's design. And his high-frequency devices, the vacuum tube devices, are as effective now as they always were. So they're getting harder and harder to find. And, we on average, we probably sacrifice one machine out of every 3 for spare parts. But we're still getting them. And over the years, I've been at this for over 15 years now, myself and my colleagues, we know exactly when they're working properly and which ones to go for and so on. So I will link you to a website link where people can find out more.
Okay, that's great. That's very interesting.
Would you like me to email your websites to one another?
I'm going to send you a special link because this isn't public in the normal sense of the word. I've been deleted.
I'm very interesting. I'm very interested in reading your books. I will look them up, and I think we should definitely do that. Read each other's book to get to know each other a bit more.
Sure.
This would be.
Sorry.
I said this would be fantastic if I'd written a book. I find it incredibly hard to write a book, so I have 0 books. But I like talking, and I've made an awful lot of videos. I had hundreds and hundreds on YouTube, but they pulled me. I was so lucky because I suddenly realized one day that I could contact people in the health world and other worlds, and I could ask them, "Can I interview you?" And except with one exception, everybody said yes. And so suddenly I realized I could get to the top people in the world in almost any subject I chose. There were some that were so big I probably might not be able to, but actually everybody I wanted to talk to was happy to talk to me for free. They didn't even want me to pay them. And so it was great because if I had a client and I didn't know how to fix them, I could go to the world's leading expert, ask them on film. It's fantastic, free Library of Alexandria at my disposal. And so luckily most of the videos do still exist, but unfortunately not on YouTube. My next favorite platform was Brand YouTube, but Brand YouTube just got hacked about 2 weeks ago and has disappeared completely. And everybody got an email from the hackers saying, we are the change agents. We have hacked you. Here's your password. We've distributed it online. And, pretty nasty. And that was one of the great free speech video platforms, that isn't censored, because BitChute censor me. Rumble's very difficult. There is an awful lot of activity going on to shut people down. But on the other hand, I think, I know I'm possibly hogging the sound waves for a bit, I think there are a couple of really simple answers. Do you mind if I run through a few simple answers?
Sure.
So
yep.
What's happening in England right now and many other countries is people are going on strike, the truckers, whoever, whatever it is. Now, the problem there is that the government don't care, but the people suffer with embargoes, with what they're doing to Russia. It's always the people who suffer. But let's say here in England, the train drivers keep going on strike. So you can't travel because there are no trains. It should be the other way around. The train drivers should keep driving the trains, but they should say to all the users, rides are free until we get what we're asking for, rather than punish the citizens. Similarly, we have around the world government officials who are called public servants, right? They're public servants. A servant means they're here to help you. So imagine next time you're parking your car that the traffic controller, the traffic warden, helps you park rather than writes you a ticket. A servant would help you, wouldn't they? So every government department could just have their job redefined as help people rather than fine them, punish them. Just help people. If they need mental help, give it to them. If they need help finding a home, give it to them. Don't charge them money when you don't have to. So all directors of corporations, all government officials will be personally liable, just like you or I are. If we start a business and somebody drops down dead, we're personally liable. But if you're employed by Coca-Cola, you're not personally liable. So one brings back personal liability. It's only sensible. You wouldn't do something that would hurt somebody else, would you now? And then you say to the politicians, this is how it is, politicians. When you go on holiday every Christmas or whenever your holiday is, nothing gets worse because you're on holiday. Go on holiday and don't come back, right? And you say to the soldiers, is there ever a justifiable war? Now, some of the psychopaths may say yes, but the majority, hopefully, would say no. And we could say to the soldiers, the police, whoever it is, look, if you want to, so to speak, switch sides and work for love and peace instead of war and plunder, change bosses from tyrants to nice folk, we could pay you double, because the money we would have spent on bombs we can give to you. And your job now could be to go home and help the family. You know, you choose what you want to do. We could stop having the bankers print money, and we could go back to the greenback in America and the Bradbury pound in England, where with war imminent, the populations were withdrawing the money, the gold from the banks, and there was going to be a run on the banks because the banks didn't have the gold really, they only pretended. So in America, Abraham Lincoln, why he got assassinated, obviously, started printing greenbacks. He told the bankers where to shove it and started printing interest-free money to fund the war. Unfortunately, that was the point. And then in England, to fund the First World War, the bankers were, as usual, holding the government's ransom, and they said 31 approximately % interest to fund your World War One. Yeah, that's what happened with Lincoln. The bankers wanted too much interest. And so they called a bank holiday for 3 days, and the English government printed their own money. So on day 3, they managed to print enough notes. They only printed on one side. On the second day, they had the notes printed on both sides, and the people were asked to accept this new money. They did. They loved it because it was interest-free. And briefly, America with Lincoln, England with John Bradbury, who was the Treasury guy or something at the time, briefly we were free of banking control and everything was fine. Now, the Bradbury pound version is much better than Lincoln's version because they were discounting money and all sorts of ridiculous things were going on at that point. But it could happen tomorrow. You know, Greece as a country needn't have gone bankrupt. No country needs to borrow money from the bankers because the bankers, for interest, print the money, but they never print the interest, which means that there's never enough money. People will always go bust and the bankers will snap up at a penny on the pound. So there are some simple ways. You know, I want a world where there is no government, but most people are unable to accept that as a concept. But if the people suddenly woke up to the fact that the government could be printing money as value, so the bankers print money as debt, you promise to repay that loan, and fractional reserve banking means that they can, I'm not sure what you're indicating.
I'll vote for you.
Oh, I see, thank you. Fractional reserve banking means if you promise to repay a loan of 1,000 whatever, the bank can print 9 times more. It's fractional reserve banking. And that started when the king caught the goldsmiths lending money that they didn't have. And the kings loved money because they could have wars and plunder and be what tyrants do. So the goldsmiths got caught cheating. And at that point, the king in England, had same thing in Netherlands and various places, the king decided to let them get away with it so long as they shared the interest, right? So now when you put money in the bank, well, you used to be able to get interest on your deposits. You can't get that anymore. Anyway, to cut a long story short, governments of the world could be printing their own money as value. So look at the value of your country. Your country is the wealthiest thing you know of. It's got buildings, land, probably airplanes, boats, you know, it's got everything, farms. It's this mega store of wealth, which you could create money against, as opposed to creating money against a promissory note. And that's how the Bradbury Pound was created, because there is no shortage of money. There is no shortage of value that can be created. So if you came to me and said, I want to take out a loan interest-free because I want to do something really good for the local environment, for people, on a big scale, whatever. You want to do something good and it's going to create value. It's going to add value to society. Great. Here's the money. Get on with it, interest-free. And we're building society. If people don't know what the banking system is. Henry Ford said, I think in 1909, if people understood the banking system, there'd be revolution before lunchtime. And people, I think, need to grasp that the world may seem impossibly complicated, but without the psychopaths running the show, the public servants and everybody else could just get on with life with all debts forgiven. Because remember, the interest has never been created. So the idea that we should pay back money that was never created is a farce. So you wouldn't want to, if I owe you $100 because I bought something, obviously those sort of debts still stand. But the idea that the people of Greece should be impoverished to such a dreadful degree they can't feed each other, for example, because of a debt that's never been printed, nobody's lost. It's, we think, bank debt, debts, must be some little old lady has lost her pension or something. No, of course not.
Okay. You know what? You guys, the four of you, are the ideal change agents of the world. You see, you've got the ideas, you've got the leadership,
for president.
You've got the influence, you've got proper connections, you've got business infrastructure, and you've got balls to make things happen. And this is the club that I want to join. All right. So, well, why don't we have a part 2 of this? Maybe next month.
Sure.
All right. Let's have a part 2.
Yeah, we could do that.
Next month. All right. Thank you. Okay. So that's a commitment already. Now, John, would you like to say something?
Yeah, do you mean in closing?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yes, may I ask each of you to just your final words to our audience?
Okay.
Maybe start with John. Yes.
Yeah, that's been a really fascinating conversation, and really great to meet you all, and also to learn more about you, Clive, and your vision for the future. I have a sneaking suspicion that what you've described, Clive, might possibly actually happen. So I'm actually looking forward to that with great excitement. And yeah, great to meet Daniel and Tero. I have a whole bunch more questions for each of you. So look forward.
Reserve it for next meeting. Reserve it for next meeting. Would you like to promote your book again? Plug your book. Yeah.
I apologize. I've just had a technical issue, a glitch on my computer, but if you can still hear me, this is my book. You can. It's published on most of the major outlets, including Amazon, and it's also an ebook. The best way to find out more information and to look at whether you're interested in buying it or not is on its website, which is www.atheoryofeverything.co.uk. So that's probably the best outlet for it. Thank you very much.
Celine Cloutier, by the way, is endorsing that book. She wrote one of the forewords, Daniel.
Oh yes, your partner Daniel actually wrote one of the forewords for my book. So I'm extremely grateful to her for that.
And I just,
Good.
yeah, and I've
Great.
just chosen Celine to be my mentor, my spiritual mentor. And I'd like to help her with her new project, which is Buddha or something. Yeah, and well, we will be talking sometime September 8th. All right. Next, Daniel. You're
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm delighted to meet John, Clive, and Tero, all three of you, and you as well, Mary. It's really a pleasure to have a morning conversation of this sort. And yes, I hope we continue and we have the contacts of everyone. And I will endeavor to read John and Tero's books before next meeting, and also Clive to see more of your work online. And so I look forward to continuing conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Clive, please.
If your presenter who's not well wants a bit of health advice, get them to get in touch with me.
Thank you, Clive.
By the way, Clive.
Other than that, just to say that I think this is an opportunity for the world to move up a notch or 2 or 10, and every answer to every problem. I mean, every problem's had an answer. There are so many problems in the world, seemingly, but the Chinese have mastered the technique of regrowing desert with food. So loads of the problems that people think it's unsurmountable. It's already done.
Okay, great. Now, Tero.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic to meet you guys. Thank you so much. And I've already sent you a LinkedIn connection request, so please let's connect there. Easier sharing of information. I don't have your data, Jonathan, but John. So hopefully we can connect. And also I want to read your books, and also invite everybody watching this to please go to Amazon and check out my book, Life is a Sandcastle. A book, simple philosophy of life, how to live a happier life. And that's, I think, it should be our purpose. If any purpose you must have, let it be to be happy, and understanding that your happiness is something that you have to define. It's your responsibility. Nobody else can, tell how to find happiness. You must find it, but it is not as hard as we like to think. And I'm very happy to have heard about so many different things new for me as well, and I'm looking forward to carrying on the conversation. And guys, hopefully one day soon we can sit by a campfire, have some nice
my goodness,
drinks
yes.
and carry on the conversation. That would be fantastic.
Yes, and we will be
you.
organizing a huge crowd of like-minded individuals all over the world. Wow. Okay. I think Avebury would be a very good place for that. Or there's another one aside from Avebury, the one on a hill, a spiritual hill.
You mean Silbury Hill or
No,
the
there's
Sanctuary
another.
or something like that?
No, there's another.
Glastonbury.
Glastonbury.
Tour.
Glastonbury will be a great place for that. Or maybe we can go to Mexico, to Cancun, or to Canada. Okay.
I vote for Mexico, please.
All right. Yeah.
Cancun.
Well,
Welcome.
anything can happen. Anything can happen. We can organize for next year. It takes 6 months to organize. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. And you are all wonderful, enriching. Well, I will run out of words to describe each one of you here. So I will just have to say, you are all incredible. And thank you so much for enriching me, enriching our audience, enriching all of us. And looking forward to another forum for next month. How about September 27th, same time?
Sure.
We'll set it up. I don't want to check my calendar right now, but we will
All right.
set it up.
Okay. So thank you so much once again. And
Yeah.
great. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.